South Africa is observing 16 days of activism for no violence against women and children. The issue of sex work is under the spotlight as the country has one of the highest rates of sexual violence globally. Well, let's speak to Mzansi National Volunteer Coordinator Faeeza Lok about the party's position on decriminalising sex work and to understand how they would achieve it. Faeeza, good afternoon. Appreciate your time today. I suppose it is a little bit surprising that whilst sex work or prostitution, it was formerly called as the oldest profession in a very liberal and forward-thinking South Africa, it remains criminal.
Yeah, good afternoon, Hugo, and to your viewers. Rise Mzansi stands in solidarity and protection with sex worker. Currently, the law criminalizes sex work, which makes sex work less safe. Our vision at Rise Mzansi is to build a safe, equal, prosperous and united South Africa in a single generation. And when we speak about safety, is to make sure that those who are in this industry have a safe and dignified workplace. And criminalizing sex work makes it less safe. It undermines sex workers' access to justice for crimes because sex workers gets abuse from clients and the police and third parties like brothel owners. And so this is something that we feel very strongly about.
So let's talk about what the shift would be. If it becomes legal, how does it make it any safer for sex workers?
Yeah, thank you for that question. If we're going to have conversations about legalizing the sex work industry, it means that we can actually start talking about how can we regulate and how can we create a more safe and dignified workplace for women, for queer people, for men to get into this industry. Because in reality, this industry is actually evolving and growing, even though it's criminalized. And we can see in other countries like Amsterdam and Japan, where they have legalized sex work, where sex work is industry is a huge economic player. I believe that this is something we can actually start going towards, which is to formalize this economy, the sex work economy. And I think that it will play a huge role in our economy if we legalize it. Those are the conversations we will have.
So let's talk about how you plan to challenge stereotypes about sex workers and sex worker clients and generate positive evidence-based news articles on sex work. Because I'd imagine that before you get to changing the act or decriminalising sex work, that there's got to be a process that's got to be carried out in the interim.
Yeah, so you spoke about bias. So a bias and stereotypes and gender roles, gender norms. All these harmful boxes that we put on sex workers. And so really it's what we do on the ground and what we've done since we've participated in the sex work conference 2 weeks ago with Sweat and EasyJiggy and the different organizations that are advocating for sex work. So what we've done is we undergo training with our organizers to help them to gain a skill to unlearn unconscious bias with the people on the ground and to teach them how to be allies with sex workers. Because at the end of the day, sex workers are mothers, they are providers, they are, they're leaders, they're sisters. And so we need to be able to not put them in boxes and challenge our own biases, and it requires us to actually gain the skill of self-awareness and be able to understand that is putting a box on someone according to your own personal experiences, social norms, or even the media that frame your understanding of what a sex worker look like and means, what their work actually means, because there's a lot of harmful stereotype and bias that people have towards sex workers, and we start by actually giving them the skill of unlearning unconscious bias.
So while you're there advocating for the decriminalisation of sex work, there are others that are anti the decriminalisation process, and some of the arguments, which I'll take you through, argue to the issue around an argument that there might be an increase in the spread of sexually transmitted infections and other public health issues. Some argue against decriminalisation based on moral or religious beliefs. And some even argue that it may lead to an increase in human trafficking. What is your stance on those thoughts?
Yeah, thank you for that question, because that comes up a lot. This is not just about ethic. It's a call for a more decolonial agenda, because our current legal framework is rooted in the apartheid era. It criminalizes sex work from then. And decriminalizing essentially, it's recognizing that sex work is a legitimate form of labor. And that's where we can actually start giving more support and education towards understanding what this industry means and towards those who are in this industry. So actually, let's actually talk about STDs, STI, sexual transmitted disease, and trafficking. So STDs, HIV, sexually transmitted disease, that's about education. Communities should be educated on how sexual transmitted disease are transmitted. This is about having safer sex, and industry and the people who are in this industry spreading this illness. Any one of us could transmit sexual transmitted disease if we're not practicing safe sex. So that's one. And then, as I mentioned, this is a decolonial agenda because this law was passed during apartheid time, and it hasn't changed for decades. So, and it clearly shows that there's in our lawmakers and the people in Parliament have bias, because this bill has been going around on for decades, and there's bias towards what actually propel human trafficking, what actually increase sexual transmission. And I think that it really starts with the people who have the power to approve and actually understand the decriminalizing, be a bill to be educated on what are the root causes of human trafficking and transmission and regulate this industry is a start for us to actually protect in this industry.
Faeeza Lok, we seem to be struggling with that connection, but thank you so much for speaking to us. And Faeeza Lok represents Rise Mzansi, and she's a volunteer coordinator. Just confirming that you can hear me before we wrap up this conversation, Faeeza.
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you loud and clear. Okay, going to attempt one more question, and hopefully there is no interruption. Now, you've talked about that this law is an apartheid-era law that decriminalizes sex work. But a look at the number of countries that have legalized sex work across the globe brings up Germany, Netherlands, New Zealand, Austria, Switzerland, a few states in the United States of America. So it is almost only a handful of countries. So it is not just akin to South Africa and the apartheid-era law, but it seems to be a general perspective across the globe.
Yeah, this is about education, and this is about understanding what this career and what sex work actually looks like. Sex work is evolving. There are platforms like OnlyFans where you don't have to participate in intercourse, and that's still a form of sex work. And so I think that the reason why globally there isn't a shift and it's a constant struggle is because of education. We need people who are in government who actually try to understand what this industry means and what sex workers actually go through and how we can better support them, because we're trying to build a safer and more equal society, and it really starts with people in government and leaders who are willing to stand in solidarity and support and protection towards the most vulnerable and marginalized communities.
Faeeza Lok, we're going to leave it there. Appreciate your time. Rise Mzansi National Volunteer Coordinator, speaking to us on the decriminalisation of sex work to combat gender-based violence.